So this presentation will cover research poster design. We'll talk a bit about kind of some basic design principles for creating a poster, a few tips and tricks, and some notes on some of the software. And then at the end, we will go over the poster printing process if you are having a poster printed through the LSU HSE eShare Libraries poster printing service. The slides and the recording will be sent out to anyone who's registered after the meeting. I may discover a few things I want to tweak about the slides, so if they're not exactly the same, don't panic. It's because I found a typo. But all right. So anytime you need to print a poster for whether it be for a symposium on campus, for a conference, for any kind of presentation, one of the first things you'll want to do is check the size requirements before you get started. It's much easier to start with the size you need your poster to be than it is to put a lot of content in the poster and then resize it later in the game. Especially if the proportions change, you may find yourself needing to rearrange a lot of content. So we found this is definitely a thing that's always worth double checking before you get started. Also, especially for some of the on-campus events, it's always worth checking to see whether there is a template that you are supposed to be using. A lot of the schools provide templates. Sometimes they're required for on-campus events, sometimes they're not, but sometimes they're just a nice place to start, even if they're not required. You also want to use the right software. We generally recommend PowerPoint because it has better kind of accessibility checking tools and is much more user-friendly in that regard than Adobe. You will need to export your poster as an Adobe PDF in order to have it printed at the library, but in general, PowerPoint is going to be your first stop for creating the poster. It also allows a lot of size options and like resizing. It's got, things like Canva have a lot of things hidden behind paywalls. Another thing you'll want to do is you'll want to locate the highest quality images you can of any charts or graphs that you want to include. Try to find the best quality you can. Don't rely on screenshots. We'll talk more about all of these later. As I said, why not Canva? It doesn't have good accessibility tools for one thing, being able to set the reading order if you need to also submit like a digital version of your document, of your slides. It doesn't have a lot of digital accessibility tools. Also, it has a lot of kind of custom fonts and graphics that may not be available in other programs. So when you go to share or export it, or if you just want to collaborate with someone who doesn't have a paid Canva account, you can suddenly find some functionality kind of missing, basically. Also, they have a lot of things that I would consider core functionality hidden behind paywalls. You have to have a premium account if you want to like change the size of a poster after you've started working on it. So for those reasons, we don't recommend Canva. Like I said, PowerPoint is really going to be kind of your first, kind of best option. One of the most common things we find people needing to do that is not necessarily in an intuitive place is how to set the slide size. In order to do this, you're going to want to go to this design portion of your ribbon at the top, and then go over to slide size. And then the last option there is custom slide size. Once you click that, it'll open a window where you can put in a width and height as desired. You can adjust the orientation. And this is where, if you want a 48-inch wide by 36-inch high poster, this is where you'll put in those dimensions. And then just click on OK. Just real quick, often when you do this, you will get another pop-up window that'll ask whether you want to maximize or ensure fit. And the right choice there can depend a bit on what you're adjusting, whether you're going large to small or small to large. If you say maximize, it's going to kind of, if you're downsizing, it'll keep all the elements at their current size, even if they don't fit on your new slide. So you could end up with things beyond the border of your slides. If you say ensure fit, it may shrink the width to, you may end up with basically blank space on either side. Either way, if you're changing the ratio, you will have to adjust the spacing of the elements in your image. There's just kind of no way around that if you're going from like a rectangle to a square or vice versa. But if you are doing something that's basically like a 3-to-4 ratio and just a larger or smaller 3-to-4 ratio, then you'll be fine. This is again why, as I said, it's best to check the slide size and start with the correct slide. PowerPoint does max out at 56 inches in either direction. So just be aware of that. If you, for some reason, need to design a really large image, then you will probably not want to use PowerPoint. I am going to just briefly mention Adobe Express. I don't necessarily, it's not my favorite tool, but LSU HSC does have seats available for students in Adobe Express. You will need to, it's not something you have access to automatically as a student. You would need to contact your school's IT supporters to get access, but it is something that we have available to students and faculty as well. You can, it's just a browser-based thing, so you don't have to download anything. It does max out at 48 inches, so it's a little smaller. Even if you don't use it to design your poster itself, it does have some handy tools. Like there's a QR code generator for free in Adobe Express that can be nice to use if you do want to include a QR code. One of the advantages is it does make it easy to export things as a PDF, or if you've got a PDF that you need to edit. It is a nice tool for that. It's just not my favorite for creating a poster. It also is a little bit more unwieldy in terms of the accessibility features. But here is kind of a brief how to set a slide size, poster size in Adobe Express. Basically right above the image that you import or whatever, it'll say resize, and you just click that and it add in your desired dimensions. Text and graphics is also something that you really should consider, both from a just kind of, regardless of anyone's visual acuity, you want posters to be comfortable and easy to read. But of course, it is also an accessibility concern. With a physical poster, you don't have these sort of digital accessibility tools, but there are still best practices in terms of making things visible to the widest number, of people possible. You kind of don't want to use a font size much below 20-point font for readability. You also want to, just for visual appeal, incorporate charts and graphs and images if you have them. It's also just helpful to break up the large blocks of text. Anytime you incorporate an image, though, you want to make sure that it is high quality. One of our requirements for the poster printing service at LSU is that you include an LSU HSC logo. You'll often want to include logos of any affiliated, agencies or organizations who may have supported the research, or any like funders, or, of the conference itself. They may require it. You don't want to just grab screenshots from the internet of these logos, though. You want to see if you can track down an actual high quality image and download it. We have a bank of high quality LSU logos for all the schools that is linked at the bottom of the poster printing website. So that should cover your LSU health needs. But for other things, you want to go to their website, see if they have, a lot of times they'll have resources, or like a marketing package or something where you can grab good quality images. And then, of course, if you're incorporating photographs or graphs or charts, you don't want to screenshot a graph in Excel and then use that screenshot in your poster. You want to embed the Excel graph in PowerPoint. This is another reason PowerPoint is nice, because, with all the Microsoft products, it's fairly easy to like embed that content directly from one thing to another. 300 DPI is a good safe standard for like, this will be a high quality image. So as much as possible, aim for that. Color, it's wonderful to incorporate color. Everyone wants their poster to be visually interesting and appealing, but you don't want the color to overwhelm the content. You want to kind of use high contrast color, and you also want to use variation in the value and in the color. So you can see I've got two examples here where I have one where the two colors included are complementary colors, which, kind of basically variants on red and green, and they're different hues and different saturations, but the value is very, very similar. And you can see this becomes a little bit tiring to read. I always think of it as kind of the colors kind of vibrate against each other in a weird way. But I've taken the same exact two colors and just adjusted the value. I think it was one of the things where you've got the little slider bar where you can, adjust the value of the colors. And I just slid the pink way closer to the white and the green way closer to black. And you can see that it makes an immediate difference in the readability of it and how easy it is to see. You also want to consider things like color blindness. If someone is red-green colorblind and there's not a value change, that's going to be very hard for them to read. Similarly, this is also a good consideration to keep in mind with your graphs and charts. If you've got a bar graph and the only thing differentiating one, element of your graph from another is the color, that may be hard for someone who can't perceive colors well to tell the difference. Whereas if you do have, a lot of them will have an option for like a patterned thing, or at least if the values are very different from each other, that'll make it easier to read for a wider range of people. I did include a link here to the webaim.org resources. They have a contrast checker there. There's a lot of color contrast checkers online, which will kind of, if you put in the hex code for the colors you're using, it'll give you sort of a readout of this is high enough contrast to be good and accessible according to whatever their standards are. This is also an area where it's perfectly fine to be boring. You can't go wrong with black text on a white background. This slide, this is going to be some kind of accessibility best practices with the limitations of it being a print document. You want to aim for sans serif fonts. Serifs are the little twiddly things at the ends of letters that you see, like if you think of Times New Roman, it kind of, goes out at the end of the stroke of the letter. The current slide is a sans serif font. There's kind of no extra ornamentation at the ends of the lines. Those are typically considered easier to read just because they're simpler. You also want to use contrasting colors, as we discussed. You want to use larger text. You want to use relatively generous line spacing, not, don't go too nuts, but, 1.2 to 2. And you want to plain language, of course, just kind of like when you're writing a consent document. Obviously, there are some limitations on how plain you can make your language, but you want it to be easy to read. You don't want things to be unnecessarily complex just for the sake of complexity. If you are including a video component in your presentation for some reason, it should have captioning. It's also a nice touch if you can include a QR code to a digital version of your poster, which, of course, your digital version will also meet all the digital accessibility standards. But this way, if someone wants to engage with your poster, but is blind or has low vision, they can use the QR code to access the digital version and then engage with it via a screen reader. It's not, a requirement necessarily. For some conferences, it might be a requirement, but it is probably a nice touch. It's something worth considering. Another thing that is also worth considering is using QR codes to include things like references, things that, or additional information. If you've got a lot of stuff to share and you're worried about your poster becoming too cluttered, you can use a QR code to link people to more in-depth information so that, your poster stays clean and readable, but anyone who wants to go deeper has that option. We also recommend not placing text over images. Partially, if someone is looking at a digital version with a screen reader, this makes it harder for the thing to parse a little bit, but it's also just harder to see if there's that information behind the text. It can be harder to read. I grabbed a lot of this from the Association of Public Health's annual meeting guidance, which I thought it kind of boiled it down fairly nicely. Okay. This is where I'm going to really start talking about the nitty-gritty of having your poster printed, specifically with an eye to LSU HSC's the eShay Library's poster printing service. If you are having your poster printed at another company or something off campus, this may not apply. But if you are having it printed through us, these are requirements. First thing, we will ask that your poster be in a PDF format. So in order to convert a PowerPoint to a PDF, it's actually a very simple process. you will want to look for save as and basically just choose PDF as the file format. Give it a good name, you know, kind of a last name, comma, first name, if you have a poster title, whatever, but, you know, and don't leave it random selection of words and numbers. Give it a good name. One thing to be aware of is depending on which version of PowerPoint you're using, you may see an option that says print to PDF. Do not select that. That will resize your poster to be 8.5 by 11 or letter size for printing. This is the culprit for most of the missized posters we receive through our request forms. So don't do that. Another good step is to check your work, though. Once you have, you know, finished your slide and exported it as a PDF, go to Adobe and open that PDF to check your work. If you open the PDF in Adobe and then go to menu, and the very last, I think it's very bottom of that menu is document properties. If you open that, it'll show you the page size. And this is a good way to check that you've set the size as you want it to. Another good step is to open the PDF and use the zoom to 100% and then look at your images. Basically, that'll show you your images full size. And if you are seeing pixelation, you will see it on the poster. Basically, if you're not sure, you know, whether they're high enough quality or how well they'll reproduce, that's a great way to find out. Also, you know, this is a good chance to give it a pass for spelling and content and grammar. Sometimes just changing the format a little bit makes things pop out at you. And also checking the alignment of columns and boxes, make sure there's no overlaps. We'll occasionally see things where there will be a random blank box that's blocking something, or where an image has strayed a little bit and is hiding some text or something like that. Just kind of a good eagle eye overview is always a nice step. And then when you're really ready, you're like, okay, I've found everything I can find. I have a link here to our poster printing webpage. This has the full policy and full details about the process. But basically, if you scroll down to submit a poster printing request, you'll be taken to a Microsoft form. And please just complete that form, complete all the information, and upload the PDF of your poster. You'll get an automated confirmation email, but you'll want to wait for one that comes from the library saying, hi, thank you, we've got your poster. We have printed an 11 by 17 proof for your review. Please come to the library to complete this step, or something to that effect. This is a requirement for our poster printing service here. We have found so many errors that get stopped at this stage. Something about just like looking at their poster as a whole, as opposed to, you know, focusing in on the specific sections. We find a lot of typos. We find a lot of problems with spacing. It's a really good step, and it's also required. So we do ask that you come and do that. Once you have approved it, we'll have you sign off on a little slip that says, we know it's good, ready to go. We do highly suggest when you come to that, when you come to the library to do that, bring your laptop with you. Make sure you have some way to get to the poster file, because we have a lot of people just find, you know, a one-letter typo. It's really nice if you just have your computer there. You can make a quick change and then send it to us again. We can print as many proofs as you want. We've had people sit in the library for a couple of hours and printed 20 different proofs for them. There is no limit on how many proofs we will print for you. We want your poster to be right. Make revisions. We'll work with you on that. However, once you sign that slip and say it's ready for printing, at that point you are committed. We will print your poster. And if you find an error after that fact, we may offer you whiteout. We do really try very hard not to do reprints. Please, you know, help us help you by being thorough when you do those appointments. After that, though, it's fairly, depending on how many posters we have in line and how busy we are, from there, it's usually fairly smooth sailing. We'll send you an email when the poster's ready for pickup. Just come back to the library, give us your name, and we'll give you your poster. One thing that is worth keeping in mind, though, is there are certain times of the year that are very, very busy poster printing seasons. October is typically our busiest month, although this last, what was it, April gave it a run for its money. That is when like large on-campus research symposiums are held. During those times, give us a minimum of a week from when you submit your request to when you need your poster. We get swamped. The poster can only print one poster at a time. We only have so many staff. If we run into any problems with equipment or supplies, we just highly recommend giving yourself enough time to find another option. If our poster, we have a brand new poster printer, hopefully it won't break. But anyone who requested a poster last spring will remember, we've had a bit of a panic of what happens if we can't print these posters, and had to tell people that the poster printer was broken. Give yourself enough time to find another printing source in the area. And just, again, it'll be a much more relaxed process if you aren't waiting till the last minute for everyone involved. And we really do appreciate all of our faculty and students who work far in advance and communicate well with us. Also, related, it's nice if you submit your poster a week in advance, but if you wait till the day before you need it to approve the poster, that also doesn't help very much. So just, give yourself time, communicate. If you have problems, we will work with you as much as we are able to. We like to give you a good product. We like to send people away happy. We like to see beautiful posters. So that is basically it. I thought I had another slide with my QR code, but maybe not. From current slide, there we go. There's my last slide. This is my contact info for printing questions, but also the iCirc public services general email is a great one. And then this link will bring you to a presentation feedback form if you do have any feedback about how I can do better next time.